Yo, 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 welcome back to another video. It's your boy Coreythemaan. We're back in it, baby. I'm not gonna say this is the last video, but it might be. This is why Marvel just canceled a bunch of movies and TV shows. I saw that Hartway, I think that's her name. The show, like the first episode, I saw like a few minutes of it. I ain't gonna say it's terrible because it wasn't terrible as much as I seen. It seemed like that whole buddy cop feeling to it, like the forensic investigator. It had a forensic investigator vibe, like the Flash, but not really much of the superhero stuff. I didn't see from the first episode. I didn't watch the whole thing. I think I watched it on stream, and I wasn't as intrigued into it. I think I ended up watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the second movie. That's my favorite movie, TMNT 2. We might have to watch a video on it right after this one or tomorrow.
Tell us about Armor Wars, the next Marvel.
What's Armor Wars?
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Marvel has been canceling a bunch more movies and TV shows recently, delaying some stuff indefinitely. That's just a nice way of saying something has been canceled. Some of the canceled stuff we knew about already, and based on what the head of Marvel Television, the other producers, have been saying behind the scenes, we have a pretty good idea of what's going on just in general. Even though you hear stuff is canceled or delayed forever, it sounds like a bad thing, but in a lot of cases, with what's happening at Marvel right now, the stuff they're tossing, it's actually a good thing, so we'll explain why. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Of course, I will do videos for whatever they do actually wind up releasing the next couple years. I put that Don Cheadle Iron Man Armor Wars clip at the beginning of this because it is kind of funny and it's probably one of the biggest things on this list of stuff that's been delayed indefinitely or like soft canceled. Maybe we'll see it in the future, maybe we will not see it. Marvel also likes to do that too, where they just won't say anything about a project that you know is supposed to happen, and then like 10 years go by and you never see it. Like, oh well, you know, it kind of got put on a shelf, like effectively kind of got canceled. Kevin Feige announced Armor Wars back at that big Disney Plus day in 2020, where they announced a ton of new projects, including the Blade movie with Mahershala Ali, which still has yet to happen. Cue Wesley Snipes and Ryan Reynolds.
There's only been one Blade. There's only ever going to be one Blade.
Don't worry, we will talk about the Blade movie, because it would be cool to see Wesley Snipes come back for sort of a Logan-style send-off. That's why Ryan Reynolds has been campaigning for Marvel to actually give him his Logan-style send-off movie. But until they released this clip of Don Cheadle joking about Armor Wars not actually happening being canceled, they had not said anything about Armor Wars in years. Like, he was in Secret Invasion as Skrull Rhodey, then the real Rhodey right at the end of that. That was originally supposed to set up his larger return in what was initially going to be the Armor Wars TV series. It started life as a TV series when they first announced it. And between all those 2020 announcements and Secret Invasion, a lot of other bad things happened behind the scenes at Marvel. It was, like I said, total chaos. We refer to that as the pandemic era of Marvel trying to make movies and TV shows. It did not go well. Like everybody in general, all the studios, not just Marvel, had a really, really hard time actually making stuff of quality during the pandemic. But there was some actual quality stuff that came out. But generally as a whole, like when you look at the multiverse saga, Marvel Phase 4, Marvel Phase 5, what that turned into, it was just a real mess. Which is why a lot of the stuff that got announced in 2020 never got made. Or it did get made and got thrown in the back of a closet. Generally, all the consistency, the quality, and their entire strategy for how they were making shows and what they were doing with the characters on Disney Plus caused a lot of fatigue in the general non-hardcore audience. Like, there's a lot of people that will just watch anything that Marvel puts out, but we're talking about the general audience here, where Marvel draws most of its money from. In order for Marvel to function as a company, they need to get everybody excited to spend their money on Marvel, not just the hardcore fans. So when we say there was a lot of fatigue in the audience, generally that's from the non-hardcore audience that has trouble following through all the different Disney Plus shows into all the movies, like this long-running plot bouncing back and forth between everything. That was why Deadpool started joking about the multiverse fatigue.
Let's just take the L and move on. I think it's been steadily great since Endgame.
Kevin Feige and the Marvel producers in charge of developing all these TV shows, the movies, explain First Bob Iger, then Bob Chapek, after he took over as CEO, briefly issued this mandate that streaming would be like the end-all, be-all of Disney's business model. So all the big
I don't know
studios
why
did
I
this.
thought
It was a
Avatar was
disaster
gonna
for
film.
everybody involved. Everybody
The
lost money, not just
blue
Disney.
people.
Everybody and their sister seems like they were getting a Disney Plus show. Kevin Feige said he personally blames their whole strategy of introducing brand new characters on those Disney Plus shows, trying to get audiences excited to then see them in
I
the
like.
movies, and that just not working at all
I wish they
because
would have
most
went with this
people
other
were not
actor.
watching the
I
TV
like it.
shows. Probably one of the
I
biggest
haven't seen the
disasters for
Marvels.
this particular strategy was the Marvels movie. They tried to do the movie as this big team up of all the characters as opposed to calling it Captain Marvel 2 and introducing Monica Rambeau and Miss Marvel during that movie, getting people to care about them. What happened is that the plot of that movie heavily
Rambeau
relied
didn't
on
have
you already
anything
coming into it knowing
other
who
than
Miss Marvel was and Monica Rambeau was before
yeah.
you
Other
actually
than that
saw the
show,
film,
she had
and the
nothing.
vast majority of people had not watched the necessary Disney Plus series like Miss Marvel or WandaVision. Marvel was basically
I
making
watched
people
Miss
do all
Marvel.
this
Miss
homework
Marvel's a
to
good
actually
one. Yeah, I
care
gotta
about the
rewatch that.
movies, as opposed to having this really awesome movie that anybody could see without having seen any of the Marvel movies or TV shows previously. It started to get to the point where a lot of the movies weren't able to stand on their own, like you had to see all this other stuff to understand and care about the movies themselves. Also see the Skrull subplot in Secret Invasion, like you had to see Secret Invasion to understand what was happening with the Skrulls in the Marvels movie and care about them. As you can guess, it was a total mess for them just over the period of a couple of years. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is another really good example of how their previous Disney Plus strategy did not work for the exact same reasons. There's a whole subplot for that
Oh
Doctor
yeah, you had
Strange
to
movie
watch.
that got canceled involving
You had to
Chthon, the god
watch
of
the What If
chaos, the
series
nightmare villain.
to
Sam
understand
Raimi had to be brought
the
in
Doctor
after Scott
Strange.
Derrickson, the original director, quit on the movie during production because of all those changes to the plot. The people who made the Doctor Strange movie, like the writers, the producers, everyone, did not watch the WandaVision episodes, which is why her character, Scarlet Witch's character, seems so different between the end of WandaVision and the beginning of Doctor Strange. And it's all because they were trying to do too much at the same time at Marvel. On top of that, their overall strategy for how the TV shows worked and how the movies worked was just fundamentally flawed to begin with. I just did a trailer video for the Ironheart series, so I'll link it down below in the description. A lot of you thought that it had been canceled because it was supposed to be released a couple years ago. They actually finished filming that series a couple years ago and were going to release it, but then wound up putting it on a shelf because of the larger changes in the quality control issues that were happening. Later during the pandemic, when Marvel started to change a lot of their release plans, trying to make things better, it was decided that Armor Wars would be too expensive to do as a TV series. They needed to do way too many CG armors on a TV budget. It would be like doing an Iron Man movie if he never wore armor and there were no huge battles or fight scenes. Like, it was just him walking around, talking to people. Part of the whole pitch of the Armor Wars title is that you see a ton of Iron Man armors fighting wars with each other. After that was turned into a movie, a couple years went by with no word on it. The Ironheart series was delayed indefinitely so that it could be released alongside Armor Wars because they were meant to be connected, like Riri Williams would appear in the Armor Wars movie. Then the big post-pandemic streaming crash happens with all the different studios. Disney, everybody is in total chaos. A bunch of their movies,
Ain't gonna
TV
lie,
shows
I
start
did not want to see
underperforming
that
significantly. This also
Ironheart.
happened to DC on their
My
side
boy
of things at
Damon
Warner
wanted to see
Brothers.
it.
Remember all the Deadpool
He
jokes?
wants
He
to
was
see all
talking
the shows.
specifically about what was happening at Marvel, and he was not
Even
lying.
though
So Kevin
tried to get him
Feige's
to
big
watch
plan
Dragon
to
Ball
fix
Z,
everything was to
he doesn't
completely
want to.
change
He
their
doesn't know what
strategy
it
for how they
is.
make TV shows and how those connect with the movies and what actually winds up getting made. Keep in mind, though, this was relatively recent, and they'd already filmed a ton of stuff that was just waiting to be released. So there's still a lot of like old era Marvel stuff waiting to come out. Ironheart is a good example of that. That was filmed before they made all these big changes. All the budgets get slashed, and to give themselves more time to polish everything they're releasing, Marvel pulls way back on their output. It's why Deadpool and Wolverine was the only movie they released this year. Originally, they were going to release 4 movies and like 4 to 5 TV shows. Now their plan is to slowly ramp up back to like 2 to 3 movies per year. Like, there's only 2 coming out next year. Blade was originally going to be released in November 2025. You do not need to be a genius to know that that's not going to happen. And as part of Kevin Feige's larger plan to turn Marvel around, like turn the ship around, this isn't a new plan either. Like, this isn't like a brand new idea. It's more of an emergency ripcord option, is to only make the movies and shows that are the safest of bets, like the easiest slam dunks, what are the biggest characters, the most popular characters that we can get people excited about. And in some cases, release the stuff that has already been filmed after spending extra time polishing it, as opposed to backgirling a lot of the older stuff that's been put on a shelf for a couple years, like the Ironheart series. If we were talking about DC and Warner Brothers, like they would just put Ironheart on a shelf and take the tax write-off and never let anybody see any of those episodes. But their real, not-so-secret plan, like anybody could figure this out, was to bring Robert Downey Jr. back as Dr. Doom and the Russo brothers for both the next Avengers movies, Doomsday and Secret Wars, and that's them trying to do the safest possible bet. The larger reason for that, and why they're willing to spend so much extra money on them, is all because they have this grand plan to give themselves a mulligan. Like Marvel is giving themselves a mulligan for the multiverse saga, a big do-over. It's sort of like them saying, what if the chaos of the last few years after Avengers Endgame never happened? What if we never made any of those big mistakes? So what they're doing is bringing Robert Downey Jr. back in the Russos to basically do what they did a poor job of doing when Avengers Endgame came out, helping them transition from one era of Marvel to like a totally new, totally different era that looks completely different. This is actually a big credit to the people that actually made that movie. They actually did too good of a job with Avengers Endgame, making that feel like an actual end to Marvel, like Marvel, the end, Marvel Endgame. What they really needed to do was actually use part of that movie to get people excited to see what was next, and they didn't really do that. One of their other big problems heading into Marvel Phase 4 is that they did not have an actual plan. Like, the next year came and they had some stuff that they developed, but they didn't really have any idea of how it was all going to fit together or what their next Avengers movie was going to be. Not in the way that they had everything planned so well when Marvel Phase 1 started. When they made that first Iron Man movie, they knew they were trying to build to the Avengers films, and they knew that Thanos was going to be their overarching villain, and they were going to basically lead into the Infinity Saga. There were many, many minor changes along the way. Like, their original plans involved Mephisto. Like, if you see some of the deleted scenes that didn't make it to Blu-ray, they actually like deleted the scenes from the theatrical release to the Blu-ray release, so you actually won't see them on your DVDs now. But essentially, they still had that plan in place for who their big villain was going to be over the next 10 years or so of Marvel, and it worked great. What wound up happening, Marvel Phase 4, Marvel Phase 5, it became a shotgun method of just shooting different ideas at the wall and seeing what stuck, what things people cared about or liked, and then just doubling down on that. That's how they eventually made Kang the overarching villain, and were planning on using him for Avengers 5 and Avengers 6. They didn't actually decide on Kang or even casting Jonathan Majors as Kang till later in the game when the Loki series was happening. Then they fired him after he had all of his legal problems, and you basically have like the really big Avengers movie that's going to rely so heavily on that main character you're supposed to have been setting up for the past several years, Thanos style, and you suddenly lost him. So not only is Marvel pulling way back on the number of movies and shows that they're making and releasing, they also have to find a really quick replacement Avengers villain that can help them land this plane that is basically crashing to the ground. Like, the multiverse plane is crashing to the ground. Who's going to land this for us? Enter Robert Downey Jr. He's meant to be that person. The Russos also. How do we introduce a brand new main villain that casual audiences that don't know a ton about Marvel will care about instantly when we only have one movie to tease him before he becomes the main villain in Avengers 5 Doomsday? It kind of be like introducing Thanos right before Avengers Infinity War came out. Like, imagine you never saw Thanos or ever heard about him, then they just tease him in the Thor Ragnarok post-credit scene, like you don't even see him at the end of that movie, and he winds up in Infinity War as this main villain. That's basically the situation they found themselves in with Avengers 5.
Yeah, I think
so essentially, Marvel right now is scrambling to flex tape the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, boom, let's fix this. Who can do this for us? Robert Downey Jr. is that person. They feel like the safest of best. Like, everybody loves Robert Downey Jr. as his Iron Man character. Why don't we just bring him back and say that he's this other character, so you have a lot of casual people excited to go see him in a movie theater and see what's actually going on. Do not be surprised if Deadpool continues to call them out on what they're doing here while they're actually doing it. So this is why they finished Secret Wars, using that as an attempt to soft reboot the MCU, clean up a lot of the leftover mess of the last few years, pretend like it never happened going forward. Like, what are you talking about? Marvel Phase 4, Marvel Phase 5? That stuff never happened. We don't know what you're talking about. It's always been this new way that you saw after Secret Wars. Marvel basically giving themselves the do-over so that they can move forward the way they want to or should have done after Avengers Endgame, with a much better handle on what they're actually releasing, only letting bangers out the door. What they've also changed about their Disney Plus strategy, this is like a whole separate thing too, because we're just talking about movies for a little while, is now they're developing TV shows more like actual TV shows used to work, where they work through a bunch of ideas and only make the strongest one, instead of giving everybody their own Disney Plus series, then trying to find out how to connect them all much later in an unsatisfying way. This is why Daredevil Born Again is their new flagship show with multiple planned seasons, and you won't have to watch the TV shows to understand what's happening in the movies anymore. As for the Blade movie, Marvel is still committed to making it, at least that's what they're saying, but it's one of those movies that's been delayed indefinitely, like the next solo Hulk movie. There is a Hulk movie that they are trying to make. The reason why it's not coming out till after Secret Wars is completely different though. Their biggest problem with the Blade movie all these past several years has mostly been the different scripts. Like, they can't agree on an actual script to make it. But the reason why it's taking so much longer to release this Hulk movie is still legal problems. Marvel still doesn't have the necessary rights to release a solo Hulk movie. Universal is still holding those hostage. Currently, that story would be more of a World War Hulk film. That's part of why they're introducing so many Hulk-related characters recently, like the Red Hulk, Thunderbolt Ross, Scar, She-Hulk. They brought the Abomination back. They brought the leader back from Incredible Hulk. He's going to be the main villain of Captain America: Brave New World. So you can kind of see they're putting the pieces on the board, preparing to make that Hulk movie. There are a billion different projects that Marvel has announced that I didn't have time to actually completely work through in great detail in this video. So if you do have specific questions about a particular show that I didn't mention in this video or a particular movie, just write it below in the comments and I'll try to explain what's happened with that. Generally moving forward with Marvel, like the next couple years and after Secret Wars, expect them to mostly lead with bangers only, or at least that's the idea. There's a bunch of big stuff coming up. Agatha episodes start next week. I'll be doing videos for that. There's going to be a bunch of Scarlet Witch stuff happening, explaining how she comes back to the MCU. We're also getting the Penguin episodes next week, so I'll be doing videos for that too. Finally getting some more DC series. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. There's a brand new Venom: The Last Dance trailer. Click here for that, and click here to learn about Marvel Knights that they're developing and the return of Marvel's Defenders characters. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
That does look kind of interesting. Marvel Knights. Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones. I really don't know anybody else that was in there. Oh yeah, Daredevil and Lecture. No chance. I don't know who the other guy was that I saw. Must be somebody new. They always introducing somebody new. Anyways, we're gonna get out of here. I'm gonna do one more video. I know I said